On a cold Christmas night, her twin daughters and millionaire husband handed her a divorce paper and evicted her from the family, but they never saw the karma coming. Sign it, mother. The words came from my 17-year-old daughter's mouth like ice cracking on a frozen lake. I stood there in the grand foyer of the mansion I had called home for 20 years, holding a manila envelope that felt heavier than anything I had ever carried, including the twins I had grown inside my body. Paige stood in front of me wearing a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her twin sister Harper stood beside her, identical in appearance, but somehow even colder in expression. Behind them, my husband Randall leaned against the marble staircase with his arms crossed, watching me like I was a stranger he was about to evict from a property he owned. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, snow fell in thick, silent sheets. It was Christmas Eve. The house was decorated for the annual party I had spent 3 weeks planning. Guests would arrive in 2 hours. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What is this?" "Divorce papers," Randall said flatly. "My attorney has been very generous with the settlement, considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I looked from him to my daughters, searching their faces for any trace of the family I thought we were. "Randall, it's Christmas Eve. Our guests will be arriving soon. Whatever this is, can't we talk about it after the holidays?" "There won't be any party," Harper said. Her voice carried the same dismissive tone she used when talking about things beneath her notice. "At least not one you'll be attending." I stared at my younger daughter, trying to find the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The child who begged for one more bedtime story, one more kiss goodnight, one more minute of my time. That little girl was gone. In her place stood this perfectly styled stranger with contempt glittering in her eyes like the diamond earring she wore. "I don't understand what's happening," I said again. The envelope trembled in my hands. "Randall, please, talk to me. What did I do?" "You didn't do anything, Mother." Paige stepped closer, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown to something terrible. "That's the problem. You've never done anything. You're just there, taking up space, embarrassing us." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my chest compress, felt the air leave my lungs. "Embarrassing you? Do you know what it's like having a mother who never accomplished anything?" Harper's voice dripped with disdain that seemed impossible from someone I had raised. "All our friends' mothers are doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs. They run companies. They change the world. What are you? A housewife. It's mortifying. I raised you." My voice broke on the words. "I gave up my career as an architect to stay home with you. That was what we agreed, what your father and I decided was best for our family." 20 years ago, Randall interrupted. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold, distant, like I was looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. "Things change, Autumn. I've changed. The girls have changed. You're the only one who stayed exactly the same. Mediocre, unremarkable, content with being nothing. I'm your wife." The room was starting to spin. "I'm their mother." "You're a placeholder," Paige said. The casual cruelty in her teenage voice was somehow worse than her father's cold calculation. "Dad's been seeing someone else for 2 years. Someone successful. Someone we actually admire." The world tilted on its axis. I reached for the console table to steady myself, my hand finding the cool marble surface that I had selected. Years ago, back when I thought I was building a home instead of a museum to someone else's success. 2 years? Her name is Veronica Sterling. Harper said the name with reverence, like she was talking about royalty. "She's a federal judge. She's brilliant, accomplished, and she actually has something to talk about besides grocery lists and garden club meetings. She's everything you're not," Paige added, "and she's going to be our new mother." I looked at my daughters, really looked at them. These girls I had grown inside my body for 37 weeks before they arrived 6 weeks early, tiny and struggling. These babies I had nursed through countless sleepless nights, rocked through fevers and nightmares and growing pains. These children I had cheered at every recital, every soccer game, every achievement, no matter how small. They looked at me like I was nothing, worse than nothing. They looked at me with pity. "Sign the papers, Autumn." Randall's voice cut through my shock like a knife. "The settlement is fair. You'll have enough to start over somewhere else. Somewhere far from here. This is my home." I heard my own voice like it was coming from underwater. "This is my home," Randall corrected. The deed is in my name. Everything here is in my name. You have no legal claim to any of it. I gave you 20 years of my life. 20 years of waking up before dawn to make breakfast, packing lunches, managing schedules, hosting dinners for his business associates, being the perfect wife and mother. 20 years of putting everyone else first. And I'm giving you a generous settlement in return. He spoke like we were discussing a business transaction, not the end of a marriage, the destruction of a family. Sign the papers, pack your essential belongings, and leave tonight. Tonight, the word came out as a whisper. It's Christmas Eve. It's snowing. You can't possibly expect me to leave tonight. Where would I even go? We have a party starting in 2 hours. Harper interrupted. She adjusted the strap of her designer dress with manicured fingers I had paid for. And you're not going to be here for it. It would be too awkward explaining to everyone why you're still here. Too pathetic, Paige agreed. She examined her own manicured nails like this conversation bored her. Just sign the papers and go with some dignity, Mother. It's the least you can do. I looked at each of them in turn. My husband of 20 years, my daughters, my babies, my whole world. I searched their faces for any mercy, any love, any recognition of the woman who had sacrificed everything for them. There was nothing. No warmth, no regret, no second thoughts. My hand shook as I took the pen Randall held out. With each signature on the designated lines, I felt a piece of myself die. My name looked strange on the paper. Autumn Clark. Soon to be Autumn Bishop again. Going back to my maiden name. Going back to the person I was before I became a wife and mother. Going back to nothing. There's a car waiting for you, Randall said. He took the papers from me immediately, like he was afraid I might change my mind. It will take you to a hotel downtown. You have 45 minutes to pack one suitcase. I'll have the rest of your things sent to you once you've secured permanent housing. 45 minutes to pack 20 years of my life? I stared at him, this man I had loved, this man I had built a life with. You won't need much where you're going, Harper said. Her smile was cruel in a way that made my heart crack. It's not like you have anything valuable anyway. No career achievements, no awards, no important possessions, just mediocrity. Have you ever been betrayed by the people you loved most in the world? Have you ever given someone everything you had, every piece of yourself, only to be told you're nothing? Have you ever watched your entire life get packed into a single suitcase, while the family you sacrificed for celebrates your erasure? I have. And let me tell you something. When you hit rock bottom, when you lose absolutely everything, you discover what you're really made of. But I didn't know that yet. Not on that Christmas Eve when I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom for the last time. 30 minutes later, I stood in the bedroom I had shared with Randall for 2 decades, the room where my daughters had been conceived, the room where I had nursed them as infants when they woke crying in the night, the room where I had planned a future that was now dissolving like snow on warm ground. Through the windows, I could see guests beginning to arrive for the party. My party, the one I had planned down to every detail. The menu I had selected, the decorations I had arranged, the guest list I had carefully curated. They would celebrate Christmas Eve without me. They would drink champagne and eat catered food and never know that. The woman who had organized it all had been thrown out like garbage. I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror. At 45 years old, I looked every year of it tonight. My auburn hair, usually carefully styled, hung limp around my face. My green eyes were red from crying. I wore the simple slacks and sweater I had put on that morning, back, when I was still a wife, still a mother, still someone who mattered. Unremarkable. Mediocre. Embarrassing. The words echoed in my mind as I threw clothes into a single suitcase with trembling hands. A knock on the door made me turn. For one desperate, pathetic moment, I thought it might be Randall coming to tell me. This was all a terrible mistake, that he still loved me, that we could fix this. Mrs. Clark? A young man I had never seen before stood in the doorway. His expression was carefully neutral, professionally blank. I'm here to take you to the hotel. Not Mrs. Clark for much longer, I thought. I took one last look around the bedroom. The bed with its sage-green duvet because Randall had once said that color reminded him of my eyes. The window seat where I used to sit and watch my daughters play in the garden below. The walls I had painted myself, choosing each shade with care. None of it had ever been mine. Not really. It had all been Randall's, and I had just been borrowing it, living on borrowed time in someone else's life. The Palmer House Hotel was elegant, but impersonal. The kind of place where people stayed when they were between lives, between Chapters between who they used to be and who they were trying to become. I spent Christmas Eve alone in a room that cost more per night than I had ever spent on myself in a month. The settlement money Randall had transferred to my account would last perhaps a year if I was extremely careful. After that, I had no idea what would happen. I couldn't think about after that. I could barely think about the next hour. Through the window, I watched families walking through the snowy streets below. Children bundled in winter coats, holding their parents' hands. Couples walking close together, sharing umbrellas and warmth. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that my entire world had ended. Somewhere in the city, Randall was introducing Veronica Sterling to our social circle. Our daughters were probably charming everyone with their poise and beauty, their perfect dresses and perfect smiles. No one would mention the mother who was suddenly, mysteriously absent. Maybe they would say I was sick. Maybe they would say I was visiting family. Maybe they wouldn't mention me at all. I opened my suitcase to change into pajamas and found something I hadn't meant to pack. A leather portfolio, worn at the edges, the zipper broken on one side. My architecture portfolio from college. I must have grabbed it by instinct, my hands remembering what my mind had tried to forget. I stared at it for a long moment, afraid to open it, afraid of what I would find inside. Finally, I unzipped it with shaking hands. Sketches. Hundreds of them. Buildings that had never been built, designs that had never seen daylight, dreams that had been packed away when I chose to stay home with infant twins instead of pursuing my career. One design in particular caught my eye. A community center I had created for my senior thesis. Modern but warm, accessible but beautiful, with clean lines and innovative use of natural light. My professor had called it genius. He had begged me to submit it to competitions, to pursue architecture seriously, to not let my talent go to waste. I had been 23 years old, newly married and newly pregnant with twins. The design had gone into this portfolio, and the portfolio had gone into storage in my parents' basement. 22 years of dust and dreams. I traced the lines of my drawing with one finger, remembering the passion I had felt creating it. The absolute certainty that I could change the world, one building at a time. The belief that I had something valuable to offer, that my ideas mattered, that I could make a difference. What had happened to that girl? The one who stayed up all night perfecting designs, who argued with professors about architectural theory, who saw possibility in every empty lot and abandoned building. I had traded her for Randall's last name and a house in Pacific Heights. I had packed her away along with my portfolio and convinced myself that being a wife and mother was enough, that I didn't need anything else, that my own dreams didn't matter as much as supporting someone else's. And now I had nothing. Not the career I had given up, not the family I had sacrificed for, nothing but a hotel room and a year's worth of money and 22-year-old drawings that no one would ever see. I should have gone to bed, should have tried to sleep, to escape into unconsciousness and deal with reality in the morning. Instead, I sat at the hotel desk and began to sketch. My hands shook at first, uncertain after so many years of disuse. The pencil felt foreign, awkward, like trying to write with the wrong hand. But slowly, muscle memory returned. Lines became walls. Curves became arches. Empty space on the page became possibility. By the time the sun rose on Christmas morning, I had filled 20 pages with designs for a building that didn't exist yet. A building that was beautiful and functional and innovative. A building that solved problems and created community and made people feel something when they entered it. A building that the mediocre, unremarkable, embarrassing woman could never have designed. But maybe someone else could. Maybe the girl I used to be was still in there somewhere, buried under 20 years. Of making myself smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. Maybe it wasn't too late to find her again. I didn't know it yet, but that Christmas morning was the beginning of everything. The moment when I stopped being the woman Randall had thrown away and started becoming someone I had never been before. Someone remarkable. Someone unforgettable. Someone who would make my daughters wish they had been kinder to their mediocre mother. But that was still years away. On that Christmas morning, I was just a divorced woman in a hotel room, sketching buildings that might never be. Built, trying to remember who I was before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's disappointment, trying to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be someone again. The first 6 months after losing everything taught me things about myself I had never wanted to learn. I learned that pride is a luxury you can't afford when you're sleeping on a friend's couch, that dignity doesn't pay rent, that the word no becomes very easy to say when you have nothing left to lose. My college roommate Frances Murphy took me in when the hotel money ran out. She lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood my daughters would have called dangerous. The building had bars on the windows, and the elevator broke more often than it worked. But Frances asked no questions and charged no rent and gave me a safe place to fall apart. "You're going to be okay," she told me on the nights when I couldn't stop crying. "You're going to get through this and come out stronger." I didn't believe her, but I didn't have the energy to argue. I got a job waitressing at a diner near Frances's apartment. The work was exhausting and the tips were terrible, and my feet hurt so badly by the end of each shift that I could barely walk. But it was money. Not enough to live on, but enough to start. I got a second job cleaning houses. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was scrubbing other people's toilets and mopping other people's floors while Randall and my daughters lived in the mansion I used to call home. But the work was honest, and the money was necessary, and no one cared that I didn't have a college degree or recent work experience. They just cared that I showed up on time and did the work. I got a third job doing data entry from Frances's apartment late at night. My eyes burned from staring at the computer screen, and my back ached from hunching over the keyboard, and I drank so much coffee that my hands developed a permanent tremor. But slowly, painfully, I started to save money. At night, after all 3 jobs were done, after I had showered and eaten whatever I could afford, I would sit at Frances's kitchen table and sketch. Buildings, always buildings. Community centers and libraries and affordable housing complexes. Structures that served a purpose beyond just looking impressive. Designs that could actually improve people's lives. Frances watched me sketch one night and said something that changed everything. "You know your architectural license lapsed, right? When you stopped practicing?" I hadn't known. I'd been so focused on surviving that I hadn't thought about the technical requirements of returning to architecture. "If you want to practice again, you'll need to take courses to reinstate it," Frances continued. "Update your knowledge of current building codes and safety standards. Prove you're still competent." "How much does that cost?" I asked, already knowing I couldn't afford it. "More than you have." Frances sat down across from me. "But there are night programs, community college courses, ways to do it slowly while you work. Why are you helping me?" I had never asked her directly. We hadn't spoken much since college, had fallen out of touch over the years. "Why take in your broke, divorced roommate from 25 years ago?" "Because I've been where you are," Frances said quietly. "Different circumstances, same rock bottom. And someone helped me when I needed it. So now I'm helping you." That conversation happened 3 months after Christmas Eve. By month 4, I was enrolled in night classes to reinstate my architectural license. By month 5, I had a small portfolio of new designs. By month 6, I had applied to 20 different architectural firms and received 20 rejections. 20-year gap in employment. Not familiar with current software. Portfolio shows potential but lacks professional recent work. Sorry, but we need someone who can contribute immediately. The rejections stung. Each one felt like confirmation of what Randall and my daughters had said. That I was nobody. That I had wasted too much time. That I had nothing valuable to offer. But then Frances said something else that changed my trajectory. "Stop trying to fit into their firms. Build your own." "With what money?" I asked. "What clients? What reputation?" "With talent," Frances replied. "With vision. With the same determination that got you through the last 6 months." She showed me her own story. Frances had been an architect before she retired, had built a small but respected firm from nothing. She still had connections in the industry, still knew people who valued innovation over pedigree. "Do some pro bono work," she advised. "Find communities that need design help but can't afford the big firms. Build your reputation one project at a time. Show them what you can do instead of telling them what you used to be." That advice led me to the West Side Community Center. The building was falling apart. 40 years old, serving a neighborhood that had been forgotten by city planning and abandoned by developers. The director, a woman named Ruth Patterson, met me in her cramped office and explained the situation. "We need renovations desperately. The roof leaks. The heating system barely works. The layout is inefficient and we're not ADA compliant. But we have no budget for an architect, let alone construction. What if I designed the renovations for free?" I heard myself say. "Pro bono work. You could use my plans to apply for city grants and private funding." Ruth stared at me like I had offered her a winning lottery ticket. "Why would you do that?" "Because I need to build a portfolio," I said honestly. And because buildings should serve people, not the other way around. This community center matters. Let me help make it better. Ruth gave me 3 months to create a design. I gave her 6 weeks. I worked every spare moment on that project. After my waitressing shift, after cleaning houses, after data entry, I would sit at Francis's kitchen table and design. I researched current building codes. I taught myself new architectural software through YouTube tutorials. I visited the community center a dozen times, talking to the people who used it, understanding their needs, their dreams for the space. The design I created was innovative and practical and beautiful. Modern materials used in cost-effective ways. Natural light maximized through strategic window placement. Flexible spaces that could serve multiple purposes. Accessibility features integrated so seamlessly they enhanced rather than limited the design. When I presented it to Ruth and the community center board, a man named Marcus Johnson, who served on the board, said something I will never forget. "This doesn't look like charity work. This looks like architecture that gives a damn about people." The local news picked up the story. Small human interest piece about a community center getting new life thanks to a volunteer architect. The story ran for maybe 90 seconds on the evening news. But people saw it. The right people. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the city planning department. They were impressed by my community center design. Would I be interested in bidding on a city project? Small contract, low budget, but legitimate paid work. I bid on it. And somehow, miraculously, I won. That first contract paid $30,000, more money than I had seen since the divorce settlement ran out. Enough to move out of Francis's apartment and into a tiny studio of my own. Enough to buy professional clothes and update my equipment and start building something real. The project was a success. The building served its community well and came in under budget and won praise from city officials. That led to another contract. Then another. 1 year after Christmas Eve, I filed paperwork to officially open my own firm, Bishop Architecture. Just me, working out of my studio apartment, taking projects that larger firms considered too small or unprofitable. But they were my projects, my designs, my vision. I wasn't making the kind of money Randall made. I wasn't living the kind of life my daughters thought was impressive. But I was building something real, something that mattered, something that was mine. 2 years after Christmas Eve, I designed an affordable housing complex in Pilsen. Mixed-income units with communal green space, energy-efficient design, accessibility features throughout. The kind of housing that gave people dignity instead of just a place to sleep. The design won a regional award. Not a huge award, not national recognition, but enough that my name started circulating in Chicago architectural circles. 3 years after Christmas Eve, my community center renovation was finally complete. I attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony and watched families flood into the beautiful space I had designed. Children running through hallways that actually had proper lighting. Seniors accessing programs and spaces that accommodated their needs. The whole community celebrating a building that served them. Ruth Patterson found me in the crowd and hugged me tight. "You did this," she said. "You changed lives with this building." I drove home from that ceremony and cried for an hour. Not sad tears. Not hurt or anger or grief, but something else entirely. Pride. Pure, uncomplicated pride in work I had done, in a difference I had made, in the architect I was becoming. 4 years after Christmas Eve, Architectural Digest featured my affordable housing project in a piece about innovative urban design. The article included my photo and a brief biography that mentioned my 20-year hiatus from architecture. The article went viral in architecture circles. Suddenly, I was getting calls from firms wanting to partner with me, from clients wanting my particular approach to design, from universities wanting me to speak to their students. The woman they called unremarkable was becoming someone people noticed. I moved my firm into a real office. Small space in a converted warehouse, but professional, legitimate. I hired an assistant, then another. I started being selective about projects, only taking work that aligned with my values, that served communities instead of just serving profit. My reputation grew. Bishop Architecture became known for designs that were innovative and beautiful and socially conscious. Buildings that won awards and served people and made neighborhoods better. I was making good money now. Not Randall's level of wealth, but enough to live comfortably, to save for the future, to stop worrying about making rent. More importantly, I was happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way I hadn't been in decades. Maybe ever. I had built this life from nothing. From a hotel room on Christmas Eve to an award-winning firm. From being thrown away like garbage to being sought after for my expertise. From mediocre and unremarkable to someone whose work mattered. And I had done it all myself. No husband to support me. No family to help me. No safety net or second chances. Just me, my talent, and the determination to prove that I was worth something. 5 years after Christmas Eve, I met Thomas Fitzgerald at an industry conference. He was a structural engineer, recently widowed, with kind eyes and a quiet strength. That reminded me of who I used to be before I learned to fight for myself. We talked about architecture and engineering and the intersection of form and function. We discovered we both valued substance over flash, community impact over impressive aesthetics. We exchanged business cards and promised to collaborate on a project sometime. 2 months later, he called about a joint bid on a municipal building. We worked together beautifully, his engineering expertise complementing my design vision. The project was a success and led to more collaborations. Somewhere in the middle of our third project together, collaboration turned into something else. Coffee meetings turned into dinner dates. Professional respect turned into personal affection. "Thomas, I should tell you something," I said one night over dinner. "I was married before. It ended badly. I have 2 daughters who I haven't spoken to in over 5 years. I'm not sure I'm ready for anything serious." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I was married for 30 years. My wife died 2 years ago. I have 3 grown children who are still grieving. I'm not sure I'm ready either, but I know I enjoy spending time with you. Can that be enough for now?" It was enough. More than enough. We dated slowly, carefully. 2 people who had been broken by loss, learning to trust again. He never pushed for more than I could give. I never demanded he be anything other than who he was. It was the healthiest relationship I'd ever had, built on mutual respect and genuine affection instead of obligation or appearances. 6 years after Christmas Eve, I received an invitation that stopped my heart. Heavy cardstock, elegant calligraphy, the kind of invitation that screamed old money and social importance. "Mr. Randall Clark and Judge Veronica Sterling request the honor of your presence at the wedding of Harper Clark to Preston Montgomery IV. My baby girl was getting married. Harper, who I hadn't seen or spoken to in 6 years. Harper, who had called me pathetic and mediocre and embarrassing. She was 23 years old now, and I had missed 6 years of her life. 6 years of birthdays and graduations and all the moments mothers are supposed to share with their daughters. The wedding was in 6 weeks, at the Ashworth estate, the house I had been thrown out of on Christmas Eve. Thomas found me sitting at my desk, staring at the invitation with tears running down my face. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. I showed him the invitation. "This is from my daughter, the one I haven't seen in 6 years. Are you going to go?" I don't know. Part of me wanted to throw the invitation away, to protect myself from more pain. Part of me desperately wanted to see my daughters again, to know who they had become. "What does your gut tell you?" Thomas asked. My gut told me that I needed to see this through, that I needed to witness what my daughters' lives had become, that somehow this wedding was part of the story that had started on Christmas Eve 6 years ago. "I'm going to go," I heard myself say, "not for reconciliation, not for revenge, just to see, to witness, to close that chapter of my life." Thomas nodded. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No. This is something I need to do alone." I RSVP'd yes to the wedding. Then I threw myself into work, trying not to think about what it would feel like to see Randall and Veronica and my daughters again after 6 years. But 3 weeks before the wedding, something unexpected happened. "Miss Bishop?" My assistant buzzed my office intercom. "There's a Harper Clark here to see you. She says she's your daughter." My heart stopped. "Send her in." I hadn't seen Harper in 6 years. I braced myself for the beautiful, poised young woman who had called me embarrassing and pathetic. The woman who walked into my office was both familiar and heartbreakingly different. Harper had grown into her beauty, but there was something brittle about her now. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, despite expertly applied makeup. Her designer dress hung a little too loose on her frame. Her smile was practiced, perfect, and completely hollow. "Hello, Harper," I said quietly. "It's good to see you. Mother." She stood awkwardly by the door, like she wasn't sure whether to come closer. "Thank you for seeing me. You're my daughter. I'll always see you." Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. It disappeared before I could identify it. "I came to ask you not to come to my wedding," she said abruptly. Of all the things I had expected her to say, it wasn't that. "Why did you send me an invitation then?" "I didn't. Paige did." Harper's hands twisted together nervously. "She thought it would be funny, a way to show you how much you've missed, how much you weren't part of. But I don't want you there. It's too complicated." "Complicated how?" "Because people will ask questions." Harper's perfect composure was starting to crack. "They'll want to know where you've been, what you've been doing. And when they find out you're Autumn Bishop, the famous architect, it will overshadow my day." I studied my daughter carefully. "You're not worried about it overshadowing your day. You're worried about it making you look bad. Everyone thinks you're dead." The words burst from her like a confession she had been holding back for years. "Or that you abandoned us. We've told everyone our mother died when we were children. It's easier than explaining that you were too pathetic to keep Dad interested. And now you're successful. Now you're someone people admire." Harper's voice rose with frustration. "It ruins the whole narrative. It makes us look like liars, like terrible daughters who rejected their mother for no reason." "You did reject me," I said quietly. "You and your sister and your father stood in that foyer and told me I was worthless, and then you threw me out on Christmas Eve. We were 17. We didn't understand. You're 23 now. Do you understand yet?" Harper's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back furiously. "Please, Mother, if you ever loved me, don't come to my wedding." I looked at this young woman who was my daughter but also a stranger. I saw the fear and insecurity beneath her polished exterior. I saw the same desperate need for approval that had driven me to make myself small for 20 years. And I saw something else, something that made my heart ache. "I'll make you a deal, Harper. I won't come to your wedding if you tell me one thing truthfully." "What? Are you happy?" I leaned forward, really truly happy with Preston Montgomery IV. Harper's face went carefully blank. "That's not relevant. It's the only thing that's relevant. Do you love him? Does he love you? Or is this just another performance, another way to appear successful and remarkable to a world that terrifies you? You don't know anything about my life. I know you're wearing long sleeves in August." I gestured to her designer blouse. "I know you've lost at least 15 pounds since I saw you last. I know you have the same look in your eyes that I had the night you and your father threw me out. The look of someone who's lost themselves trying to be what everyone else wants them to be. I have to go." Harper stood abruptly. "Harper," my voice stopped her at the door. "I won't come to your wedding. Not because you asked me not to, but because I don't want to watch my daughter make the same mistakes I did. But when you're ready to have a real conversation about your life, about what you really want, about who you actually are beneath all the performance, I'll be here. I'll always be here." Harper left without responding, but I saw her shoulders shake as she walked away. I saw her hand tremble on the door handle, and I knew the seeds of doubt had been planted. 2 days before the wedding, my phone rang at 2:47 in the morning. I fumbled for it in the darkness, my heart pounding. Calls at this hour were never good news. "Mom?" I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. The voice was small and frightened and achingly familiar. "Paige, I need you." My daughter's voice cracked. "Please, Mom, I need you right now. Where are you?" "Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Emergency room. Can you come? Please? I'm on my way." I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets to the hospital. My mind raced with terrible possibilities. Accident, illness, something wrong with Harper or the wedding. Nothing prepared me for what I actually found. Paige sat in the emergency room waiting area wearing a torn designer dress. Her face was bruised, swelling around her left eye. Her lip was split. Her hands shook as she held an ice pack to her cheek. "Oh, baby." The words came out as a sob. I crossed the waiting room and gathered my daughter into my arms. She collapsed against me, her whole body shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside her. "What happened?" I held her tight, one hand stroking her hair like I used to when she was small. "Who did this to you?" The story came out in fragments between sobs. Paige had been dating someone for 8 months, a rising political star named Marcus Rothwell. Randall approved of him. Veronica thought he was perfect. Everyone said they made a beautiful couple. The wedding rehearsal dinner had been that evening. Marcus had been drinking. When Paige tried to leave early, he got angry. She'd never seen him angry before. He grabbed me. Paige's voice was muffled against my shoulder. Said I was embarrassing him by leaving, that I needed to stay and play my part. When I tried to pull away, he hit me. Did you call the police? No. Paige pulled back, and I saw shame in her eyes. I called Dad first. He said I was overreacting, that Marcus was just stressed about the campaign, that I should go back to the dinner and apologize for causing a scene. He said, what? Harper wouldn't answer my phone calls, said I was trying to overshadow her wedding. Veronica told me I should have handled it more discreetly, that going to the hospital would create bad publicity. So, you called me. You're the only one who came. Paige's face crumpled. The only one who didn't tell me to go back, who didn't care more about appearances than whether I was okay. I held my daughter while she cried. Rage burned in my chest, not at Paige, at Randall, who had taught his daughters to value image over safety, at Veronica, who prioritized publicity over protection, at the culture they had created, where a young woman getting hit by her boyfriend was less important than avoiding a scene. I was so horrible to you, Paige said when her sobs finally quieted. That night, Christmas Eve, the things I said, I've spent 6 years telling myself you deserved it, that you really were everything we said you were. Shh, you don't have to do this now. Yes, I do. She gripped my hands. Because I'm turning into Veronica, cold and calculating, caring more about how things look than how they feel. And Harper is turning into Dad, going through all the motions of a perfect life while dying inside. And we did this to ourselves when we pushed away the one person who actually loved us. You were 17. I brushed tears from her bruised face. You were children influenced by your father. I'm 23 now. I should know better. But I've been so scared of being ordinary, of being unremarkable like they said you were, that I chose someone who makes me feel small and afraid, just like you did with Dad. My breath caught. What? I've read all your interviews over the past 3 years. Paige's eyes were red but clear. I've followed your career, and I finally understood what we did to you. We made you feel worthless for choosing to be a mother. But you weren't worthless. You were brave enough to choose love even though it didn't work out the way you hoped. A doctor approached before I could respond. Miss Clark, we need to document your injuries and file a police report if you want to press charges. Paige looked at me uncertainly. I'll be right here, I promised. I'm not going anywhere. I sat in that emergency room waiting area while they photographed my daughter's injuries, while she gave her statement to a police officer, while they processed what had happened to her. And I thought about the path that had led here. How Randall's values had taught his daughters to prioritize appearances over authenticity. How that lesson had nearly destroyed me and was now hurting them. How karma worked in strange ways. When Paige finally emerged from the examination room, she looked exhausted, but somehow lighter. I'm pressing charges, she said, against Marcus. I'm done protecting men who hurt me just because they look good on paper. I'm proud of you. Will you take me home? Not to Dad's house. To your place. I don't want to see him right now. Of course, we drove through the pre-dawn streets to my apartment. It was modest by the standards Paige had grown up with. No mansion, no marble floors, no grand staircase. Just a comfortable 2-bedroom space that I had made my own. This is nice, Paige said, looking around. It feels like you. It is me. I showed her to the guest room. Get some rest. We'll figure everything else out in the morning. Mom? Paige's voice stopped me at the door. I'm sorry. For everything. I know sorry doesn't fix it, but I am. I know, baby. Get some sleep. The next morning, Paige's phone exploded with messages. Randall demanding she come home immediately. Harper hysterical that Paige was ruining her wedding weekend. Veronica insisting she needed to make a statement downplaying the incident. Paige turned off her phone and looked at me across my kitchen table. I'm not going to the wedding, she said. I know that makes me a terrible sister. But I can't pretend everything is fine. I can't watch Harper marry someone she doesn't love while my face is still bruised from a man who said he loved me. Have you talked to your sister? She won't listen. Paige's voice was heavy with sadness. She's so focused on having the perfect wedding, marrying the perfect man, living the perfect life. She can't see that she's making the same mistakes we pushed you into making. Maybe she needs to see you, I said carefully. Maybe she needs to see what happens when you prioritize appearances over truth. What do you mean? Come with me to the wedding. Paige stared at me. I thought you weren't going. I wasn't, But I think Harper needs to see both of us there. Needs to see that there's another option besides marching down that aisle into a life that will make her miserable. You think she'll listen? I think she's terrified. Just like you were. Just like I was. And sometimes people need to see courage in action before they can find their own. So we're going to crash my sister's wedding? We're going to give your sister a choice. I smiled. She can go through with it if she wants, but she should know she doesn't have to. That walking away is always an option, even at the altar. Paige's bruised face broke into a smile. Dad is going to lose his mind. Probably. But this isn't about him anymore. It's about you and Harper finding your own paths instead of following the one he laid out. The day of Harper's wedding was perfect. Clear blue skies despite it being August. The Ashworth estate transformed into an elegant wedding venue with white chairs arranged on the lawn and flowers everywhere. I stood at the back of the seating area, Paige beside me. My daughter wore sunglasses to hide her black eye, but the bruising on her face was still visible. We got some stares, some whispers. I recognized a few faces from my old life, people who had been at dinner parties I hosted, events I attended as Randall's wife. They barely recognized me. 6 years had changed me that much. The ceremony began. Harper appeared at the top of the aisle on Randall's arm. She looked stunning in Vera Wang, every inch the perfect society bride. She also looked terrified. Our eyes met across the crowded lawn. I saw her see me, saw her see Paige with her bruised face, saw the flash of recognition, of understanding, of something that might have been hope. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly. Traditional vows, beautiful music, everything choreographed to perfection. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, the crowd waited in polite silence for the formality to pass. I stood up. 500 guests turned to stare. Randall's face went purple with rage. Veronica looked like she might faint. Preston Montgomery IV looked confused, but Harper looked relieved. I object, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the lawn. Not because the groom is a bad person, but because the bride doesn't love him. Chaos erupted. People shouted. Security guards started moving toward me. Randall began pushing through the crowd, but Harper's voice cut through the noise. She's right. The crowd fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at the bride. Harper turned to Preston. I'm so sorry. You're wonderful. You're everything anyone could want in a husband. But I don't love you. I'm marrying you because you're impressive, because you check all the right boxes, because my father approves. But I don't love you, and you deserve someone who does. Preston stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. I know, he said. You know, Harper, I'm gay. Preston's voice was gentle. I'm marrying you because my father expects it, because it's politically advantageous, because it looks good for my career. But we'd both be miserable. Thank you for being brave enough to stop this. The crowd gasped. Camera phones appeared. This was going to be all over social media within minutes. Harper picked up her Vera Wang skirts and ran down the aisle. Straight to me. I caught my daughter in my arms, holding her tight, while 500 people watched and whispered and recorded and judged. I'm sorry, Harper sobbed against my shoulder. I'm so sorry for everything. I know, baby. I stroked her hair. I know. Paige appeared beside us, wrapping her arms around both of us. Can we go home, Mom? My apartment is small, I warned them. I can't give you the life you had here. We don't want that life, Harper said fiercely. We want a real life, one that's actually ours, with you. I looked at my daughters, these young women who had broken my heart 6 years ago, who were now asking for another chance, for a different path, for the mother they had rejected. Randall was shouting something about lawsuits and ingratitude. Veronica was trying to calm the crowd. Guests were filming everything, already posting to social media, but none of that mattered. My daughters had chosen me, had chosen truth over appearance, authenticity over approval, real life over perfect performance. Let's go home, I said. We walked away from the Ashworth estate together, away from the mansion and the money and the life built on appearances, away from Randall's rage and society's judgment and everything they had been taught to value, toward something real, toward a life that was actually theirs, toward home. The apartment that had felt spacious when it was just me suddenly felt very small with 2 additional people living in it. Harper took the guest room. Paige insisted on sleeping on the couch. Both of them looked around my modest two-bedroom apartment like they had landed on another planet. "This is where you live?" Harper asked, not unkindly, just surprised. "This is home." I watched them take in the simple furniture, the small kitchen, the single bathroom we would all be sharing. "It's not what you're used to, but it's mine. I earned every piece of it." Paige sat on the couch that would become her bed. "It's perfect." That first week was awkward and painful and necessary. We were strangers trying to become family again. My daughters were adults now, not the 17-year-old girls who had helped destroy my life. I was a different person too. Not the broken woman who had signed divorce papers on Christmas Eve, but someone who had rebuilt herself from nothing. We had to learn each other all over again. Harper cried a lot that first week, partly from relief at not marrying Preston, partly from grief over the life she had been living. She had spent 6 years performing perfection, and the mask had finally cracked. "I don't even know who I am," she said one night. We were sitting at my small kitchen table drinking tea. "Everything I've done for the past 6 years has been about looking successful, looking impressive. But I don't actually like any of it. What do you like?" I asked. "I don't know." She stared into her teacup like it might have answers. "When I was little, I loved art, painting and drawing. But Dad said that wasn't a real career, so I studied business instead. I hate business. I'm terrible at it, and it bores me to tears. But it looked good on paper. You could go back to art. I'm 23 years old, with a useless business degree and no real skills. Who's going to take me seriously as an artist now?" "Harper." I waited until she looked at me. I was 45 years old with a 20-year gap in my resume when I started over. You have your whole life ahead of you. It's not too late to become who you're supposed to be. Paige was quieter than her sister, but she was processing just as much. The charges against Marcus Rothwell were moving forward. She had to give depositions and face the reality of what had happened to her. "Dad called again," she told me one afternoon. "Said I was ruining the family's reputation by pressing charges. That Marcus comes from a good family, and I should think about how this affects everyone else." "What did you tell him?" "That he can go to hell." Paige's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "I told him that he chose his reputation over his daughter's safety, and I am done trying to earn the approval of someone who doesn't actually love me. I'm proud of you." "Are you?" "Because I'm terrified. I don't know how to exist without Dad's approval. I've spent my entire life trying to make him proud, trying to be worthy of the Clark name. And now I've burned that bridge and I have no idea who I'm supposed to be without it." "You're supposed to be Paige, just Paige, not Randall's daughter or anyone's idea of perfect. Just yourself. But what if myself isn't enough?" "It is." I took her hand. "It always was. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy trying to be someone else." The three of us developed a routine over those first weeks. I went to work at Bishop Architecture each day. Harper and Paige stayed at the apartment, both of them trying to figure out their next steps. Harper started painting again. She set up a small workspace in the corner of the guest room and spent hours creating abstract pieces that were dark and emotional and startlingly beautiful. Paige enrolled in therapy. She went twice a week and came back exhausted but slowly healing. She also started researching graduate programs in social work. Turned out her political science degree could be useful after all, just not in the way Randall had envisioned. One evening about a month after the wedding, I came home to find both daughters waiting for me with serious expressions. "We need to talk," Paige said. My heart sank. This was it. They had realized that living in a small apartment with their middle-aged mother wasn't actually what they wanted. They were going back to Randall's world of money and comfort and ease. "Okay." I sat down, bracing myself. "We want to learn architecture," Harper said. "What?" "We've been talking." Paige leaned forward. "And we both want to do something that matters, something real. Harper has an eye for design, and I'm good with numbers and logistics. We could help you with the firm. You don't have any training in architecture, so teach us." Harper's eyes were bright with excitement I hadn't seen in years. "Or we'll go back to school, get the proper degrees, whatever it takes. But we want to build something with you, Mom. Something that actually helps people instead of just looking impressive." "Why?" I had to ask. "Why architecture specifically?" "Because you love it," Paige said simply. "And watching you talk about your projects, seeing how much pride you take in buildings that serve communities. It's the first time in our lives we've seen what real passion looks like." Dad loves money and status. You love creating things that improve people's lives. We want that too. This isn't going to be easy. I looked at both of them. Architecture school is brutal. The hours are terrible. The work is demanding. And even after you get your degrees, you'll be starting at the bottom. No special treatment because you're my daughters. Good, Harper said. We're done with special treatment. We want to earn something for once. So that's how Bishop and Clark Architecture was born. I enrolled both daughters in community college architecture programs. They started with basic courses, learning the fundamentals I had studied decades ago. At night, they would spread their homework across my kitchen table and I would help them understand spatial relationships and building codes and structural integrity. Harper discovered she had a natural gift for sustainable design. She became obsessed with green architecture, with buildings that worked with the environment instead of against it. Her artistic eye, combined with technical training, made her designs innovative and beautiful. Paige found her calling in the business side of architecture: project management, client relations, budget oversight. All the skills Randall had tried to push her toward for his own purposes became useful in a context she actually cared about. 18 months after the wedding, they both transferred to a 4-year architecture program. 2 years after that, they graduated with honors. And Bishop Architecture officially became Bishop and Clark Architecture. We moved into a real office in a converted warehouse in the West Loop. The space was raw and industrial and perfect. High ceilings, exposed brick, natural light flooding through massive windows. We built out the interior ourselves, spending weekends installing drywall and painting walls and creating a workspace that reflected who we were. The sign went up on a Tuesday morning. Bishop and Clark Architecture, my name and my daughter's name together, building something real. Our first project as a partnership was a community center renovation in Englewood. The neighborhood had been neglected by city planning for decades. The existing center was falling apart. The residents deserved better. We worked on that project for 6 months. Harper designed a building that was modern but warm, using sustainable materials and maximizing natural light. Paige managed the budget and timeline, finding creative solutions when money got tight. I oversaw the whole operation, teaching my daughters everything I knew about bringing a vision to life. The day we finished that project, we stood outside the completed building and watched families pour in for the grand opening. We did that, Harper said softly. We actually made a difference. This is just the beginning, I told her. I was right. Over the next 3 years, Bishop and Clark Architecture built a reputation for innovative, community-focused design. We took projects that larger firms considered too small or unprofitable. We worked with nonprofits and community organizations and municipal governments. We designed buildings that served people instead of impressing them. We also designed the occasional high-profile project that paid well enough to fund our passion work: corporate headquarters, luxury residential buildings, commercial developments. Harper's sustainable design expertise and my reputation brought in clients who wanted both beauty and social responsibility. The firm grew. We hired more staff. We won awards. We became known in Chicago architectural circles as the firm that gave a damn about people. But the project that changed everything came from an unexpected source. Miss Bishop, my assistant, buzzed one afternoon. Sterling and Associates law firm is on the line. They want to discuss a potential project. I froze. Sterling and Associates. Veronica Sterling's father's firm. The same firm that handled all of Randall's business interests. Put them through. The conversation was professional and brief. Sterling and Associates was building a new corporate headquarters. They wanted to interview several architectural firms for the project. Would Bishop and Clark be interested in presenting? Yes, I said. We'd be very interested. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone for a long moment. Everything okay, Mom? Paige poked her head into my office. Sterling and Associates wants us to bid on their new headquarters. Paige's eyes widened. That's Veronica's family firm. I know. Are you going to do it? What do you think I should do? I think you should show them exactly what the woman they underestimated can create. The presentation was scheduled for 3 weeks later. We spent every spare moment preparing. Harper created designs that were innovative and beautiful. Paige put together budget projections and timelines that were aggressive but achievable. I crafted a presentation that emphasized our values and our vision. The morning of the presentation, I stood in front of my closet trying to decide what to wear. Professional but not trying too hard. Confident but not arrogant. The woman I had become, not the woman they remembered. I settled on a tailored suit in deep navy, simple jewelry, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. I looked successful, competent, completely in control. I looked nothing like the broken woman who had signed divorce papers 8 years ago. The conference room at Sterling & Associates was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, original artwork on the walls, a massive Italian marble conference table that probably cost more than most people's cars. I sat at the head of that table with my daughters beside me and felt absolutely no fear. Ms. Bishop, the senior partner Harold Mackenzie, reviewed our credentials with barely concealed surprise. I have to admit, when Judge Sterling recommended you for this project, we were skeptical. Your firm is relatively new. 3 years old as a partnership, I confirmed. But my individual practice goes back 8 years, and our portfolio speaks for itself. I opened my laptop and began the presentation. Images filled the screen. The community center in Inglewood, the affordable housing complex in Pilsen, the mixed-use development that had won a National Architecture Award, the sustainable office building featured in Architectural Digest, all of it designed with purpose, all of it serving communities while being beautiful and innovative. These are impressive, Harold admitted. But this project is significantly larger than anything you've done before. We're talking about a $50 million corporate headquarters, multiple floors, complex infrastructure, tight timeline. Can your firm handle something of this scope? Can yours handle working with architects who won't compromise their vision? I met his gaze steadily. I don't design buildings that are just functional, Mr. Mackenzie. I design buildings that transform the spaces they occupy, that make people feel something when they enter them. If you want generic corporate architecture, there are a dozen firms that will give you that. If you want something remarkable, something that will define your firm's identity for the next 50 years, you hire us. Harper pulled up her sustainable design concepts, energy-efficient systems that would cut operating costs by 40%, green roof technology that would reduce the building's environmental impact, natural light optimization that would improve employee well-being and productivity, page-presented timeline and budget projections that showed we could deliver the project on schedule and within budget while maintaining our design integrity. The partners asked tough questions. We had solid answers. They pushed back on some of our more innovative ideas. We defended our vision while showing flexibility on implementation. An hour into the presentation, Harold Mackenzie smiled. You're hired. Just like that. Just like that. Your passion is evident. Your designs are exceptional. And frankly, your commitment to social responsibility aligns with our firm's values. When can you start? As Page and Harper gathered our materials, the conference room door opened. Veronica Sterling walked in. She looked exactly as I had imagined from my daughter's descriptions years ago. Polished, poised, intimidating in her federal judge robes. Maybe 5 years younger than me, with sharp features and calculating eyes that were used to commanding respect. She stopped dead when she saw me. Harold, I wanted to introduce you to. She trailed off, color draining from her face. You, Judge Sterling. My voice was calm, professional, completely controlled. How nice to finally meet the woman who took my family. I didn't realize. Veronica looked at Harold in panic. Mr. Mackenzie, I need to speak with you privately. Is there a problem? Harold looked between us, confused.